The wind howled across the courtyard as Prince Alaric rode through the castle gates, his stallion's hooves clattering against the cobblestones. The banners of Aldenbury snapped violently in the air, carrying the weight of history, pride, and expectation. He dismounted swiftly, his gloved hands still trembling, not from cold, but from fury. He'd just returned from the northern front, where the rebellion had claimed too many lives. The smell of blood and smoke still clung to him. His armor was stained, his mind a storm. But what awaited him inside the grand hall was worse than any battlefield. "Your Highness," a servant stammered, bowing low. "The Queen Mother awaits you in the throne chamber. She says it's urgent." Alaric didn't wait to be announced. He pushed through the tall oak doors, his boots echoing sharply across the marble floor. The chamber was lit by tall candelabras, their flames trembling as if nervous of what was to come. Queen Eleanor sat on the dais, regal and composed, her silver crown glinting beneath the light. "Mother," Alaric said, his voice rough, "you sent for me?" Eleanor rose slowly, studying her son, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that once burned with idealism but now looked haunted. "You've seen enough blood for a lifetime, my son," she said gently. "Now it is time you see the cost of peace." Alaric frowned. "What do you mean?" "The council has agreed. The kingdom can no longer afford instability. It is time you take a bride and unite Aldenbury with House Verdun." The words struck like a slap. Alaric's jaw tightened. A political marriage? Now? After everything we fought for? Eleanor's gaze didn't waver. "Not for power, Alaric, for survival. The Verdons hold the trade routes. Without them, our coffers will bleed dry. And they've agreed to the alliance if you marry Lady Seraphine." The prince exhaled sharply and turned away. "I don't even know her." "You will," the queen said softly. "By decree of the crown, the ceremony will take place within the fortnight." He felt the walls closing in. His life, his choices, dictated once again by the throne he was bound to inherit. "And if I refuse?" Eleanor's expression darkened. "Then the people will pay the price for your pride." For a long moment, silence filled the hall, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Alaric bowed his head, not in obedience, but in defeat. "As you wish, mother." 2 days later, the castle buzzed with preparations. Banners were cleaned, musicians rehearsed, servants scrubbed the floors until they gleamed. But among the bustle, a quiet storm brewed inside the prince's heart. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Alaric slipped out through the servants' passage into the royal gardens. He needed air, space, something untouched by duty. He wandered down the stone path, past fountains and rose hedges, until he heard a faint sound. A voice, soft, melancholy, singing. He followed it, drawn as if by instinct, and found a young woman sitting by the fountain, mending a basket of flowers. Her auburn hair glowed in the fading light, and her voice seemed to breathe life into the dying day. When she noticed him, she froze. "Oh, forgive me, your highness," she rose quickly, bowing low. "I didn't hear you approach." I smiled faintly. "You sing beautifully." Her cheeks flushed. "It's just an old song my mother used to hum. I didn't mean to intrude." I said, "What's your name?" "Clara, my lord. I serve in the kitchens." "Clara," I repeated, as if tasting the name. "Do you always sing while you work?" "Only when no one is listening," she said with a shy smile. "The others say it slows my hands." I laughed softly, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in weeks. "Perhaps they're jealous." She smiled back, then quickly looked down again. "You shouldn't be here, my lord. If anyone sees—" I said with a defiant tone, "For once, I'd like to do something that's mine." Our eyes met, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the world felt still. No politics, no duty, just two souls in the quiet of the garden. Then the spell broke. A bell rang from the castle tower. "I should go," Clara whispered. gathering her things. "Good evening, Your Highness." I said, "Wait. Will I see you again?" She hesitated, then smiled. "If fate allows it." And she disappeared through the garden gate, leaving the prince staring after her, his heart pounding with something dangerously close to hope. The following week passed in a blur of preparations and expectations. Alaric met Lady Seraphine only once before the engagement ball. She was beautiful, yes, statuesque, poised, every inch the noble daughter her title promised, but her eyes were cold, her smile carefully measured. When they danced, it felt like two strangers moving through ritual. That night, long after the guests had gone, Alaric stood on his balcony looking down at the gardens where he had met Clara. He knew it was foolish, dangerous even, but his heart ached to see her again. And fate, it seems, heard him. The next morning, he found her in the same spot, by the fountain, gathering petals. She looked up startled as he approached. "Your Highness," she whispered. "You shouldn't." I teased lightly. "Do you always tell people what they shouldn't do?" She bit her lip, torn between fear and amusement. "I tell princes what might ruin them." I said quietly, stepping closer. "Then I suppose I'm already ruined, because I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath caught. "My lord, if anyone saw," I said in a low voice, "they won't. Just tell me something real, Clara, something that's yours." She looked into my eyes uncertain, then said softly, "Real things aren't meant for princes." I smiled sadly. "Then maybe I don't want to be one anymore." Our hands brushed, just once, but it felt like fire, a forbidden spark that neither could extinguish. From the balcony above, unseen, Queen Eleanor watched. Her expression was unreadable, but in her eyes burned both sorrow and resolve. That night, as the castle slept, Eleanor summoned her advisor. "We must test him," she said, "before he destroys everything we've built." The advisor bowed. "And the girl?" "Bring her to me," Eleanor said coldly. "Tomorrow." The morning sun rose golden over Aldenbury, glinting off the castle towers like blades of fire. But beneath its beauty the air was thick with unease. Whispers stirred through the halls, rumors of a kitchen maid summoned before the queen. Clara stood trembling at the edge of the throne chamber. Her simple dress looked painfully out of place against the velvet carpets and gilded walls. The queen's cold gaze met hers. "You are Clara, daughter of Tomas the woodworker?" Eleanor asked, her tone clipped. "Yes, your majesty," she said softly, her knees bending in a curtsy. "You've caught the prince's attention." Clara's head jerked up. I didn't mean—" "Silence!" The queen's voice sliced through the air. "Whether you meant to or not is irrelevant. You stand at a dangerous edge, child. Do you understand what it means to distract a man born to rule?" Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "I never wanted to distract him. I only sang." "Then you will sing again," Eleanor interrupted. "Before the court, tonight." Clara blinked, confused. "Your Majesty? You claim innocence? Then let the kingdom see it." Eleanor's tone softened, though her eyes remained like steel. "If your heart is pure, it will endure the weight of their gaze. If not," she let the silence linger, heavy and cruel, "the truth will reveal itself." The guards escorted Clara away, leaving the queen standing alone, her reflection flickering in the golden mirrors. She sighed deeply, the mask of control cracking for a heartbeat. It is better to break his heart now than to watch him destroy the crown later. That evening, the great hall glittered with nobles, merchants, and soldiers, the elite of Aldenbury, gathered for what was announced as a royal exhibition of song and culture. But whispers spread quickly. Everyone knew this was something else. Prince Alaric entered, dressed in ceremonial black, unaware of what was awaiting him. His eyes searched the room instinctively, and then froze.
Clara stood on the stage, pale as moonlight, a single candle burning beside her. "What is this?" he murmured, turning to his mother. "A test, for both of you." The room fell silent as Clara began to sing. Her voice trembled at first, then grew steady, warm, heartbreaking, and impossibly beautiful. Every word seemed to echo through the marble halls, carrying not just melody but truth. She sang of love and loss, of duty and freedom, of a heart caught between fear and desire. And as she sang, Alaric's chest tightened painfully. The crowd was spellbound, but the Queen's eyes were fixed not on Clara, but on her son. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor rose. "A fine performance," she said coolly. "Tell me, Clara, what inspired such sorrow in your voice?" Clara's hands shook. "Your Majesty, it was not sorrow, it was love." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eleanor's expression hardened. "Love?" Clara's voice broke. "Yes, I love him." The words struck like lightning. Alaric stepped forward, his face pale. "Enough, mother. This has gone far enough." But Eleanor lifted a hand. "So it is true. You would throw away everything, your duty, your title, your crown, for a servant?" Alaric's eyes burned with defiance. "I would throw away everything that makes me less human." The hall erupted in whispers. Eleanor stood tall, her voice sharp as steel. "Then you are no longer fit to be heir of Aldenbury." The room froze. Clara gasped, "No, please!" Guards stepped forward, but Alaric's command stopped them. "Touch her, and you'll answer to me." The Queen stared at her son, her heart twisting beneath the weight of her crown. For years she had ruled with reason, never emotion. But now, as she looked at him, her only child, she saw the man her father once was, passionate, reckless, unyielding. "Then you will prove your love," she said finally. "At dawn, you will leave this castle with nothing but the clothes on your back. Survive a fortnight beyond the city walls. If you return with her hand still in yours, the crown will bless your union." The hall buzzed with disbelief. Alaric met her gaze steadily. "And if we fail? Then you'll never see her again." Clara trembled, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Your Majesty." "Enough," she said. "Guards, escort them to the gates at sunrise." The next morning, under a crimson dawn, the castle gates opened. Alaric stood beside Clara, stripped of his title and armor, dressed in plain linen. The Queen watched from the balcony, her face unreadable. "Are you afraid?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. Terrified. They walked into the mist hand in hand, leaving behind the only world he'd ever known. The countryside was harsh. The nights were cold. They begged for food in small villages where no one recognized them. Once, when Clara fell ill, Alaric spent the night awake by his side, whispering stories until she slept. Days passed, and hunger clawed at their strength. Yet despite it all, something sacred grew between them, something real. On the seventh night, they found shelter in an abandoned chapel. Rain poured through the roof as Clara shivered in his arms. "You could turn back," she murmured. "Your mother would forgive you." He shook his head. "There's no crown worth more than you." Her eyes glistened. "You don't belong in the dirt, Alaric." He smiled softly. "Maybe this is where I find out who I really am." Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces, two souls against the storm, clinging to each other as the world tested their resolve. Back in the castle, Queen Eleanor received daily reports from her spies. Each one painted the same picture: hunger, hardship, and devotion. But it was the 12th day's report that broke her. "They share what little food they find," the messenger said. "He carries her when she is too weak to walk. They have nothing left, yet they still smile." She dismissed him, then sat alone in the quiet hall. Her reflection stared back from the mirror. The image of a queen who had traded her heart for order. "What have I done?" she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled. The kingdom slept, unaware that its queen wept for the first time in years. The storm that night was merciless. Rain turned the roads to rivers. Alaric and Clara sought shelter beneath a collapsed bridge, their bodies trembling from the cold. "Stay with me," he whispered, clutching his hand. "I'm trying," she breathed weakly. He pulled her close, trying to shield her from the wind. "We're almost there. Just one more day." Her eyes fluttered open, soft and tired. "Even if we don't make it, I'd still choose you." He pressed his forehead against hers. "Don't say that. We'll make it. I swear it." The storm raged on, but Alaric held her tighter, his body shivering as he whispered promises into the night. By dawn, the rain had stopped, but the world was eerily silent. Clara's hand was cold. Alaric froze. "Clara?" No answer. He shook her gently. "Clara!" Her eyes remained closed. "No!" His voice cracked, raw and broken. "Please, no!" He cradled her body, sobbing into her hair as the morning light crept over the horizon. The queen's test had been cruel, and it had taken everything from him.
The morning after the storm, Aldenbury was veiled in mist. The countryside was silent, save for the cry of a single crow that echoed through the valley. A lone figure trudged through the mud. Prince Alaric, his clothes soaked, his face pale with grief. In his arms, he carried Clara. By the time he reached the city gates, the guards froze, their spears trembling. The prince, who had left a noble heir, now returned barefoot, hollow-eyed and broken. "Announce me," he said hoarsely, "to the queen." The guards hesitated, but his voice left no room for refusal. "Now!" Word spread like wildfire through the castle. "The prince has returned, alone." When the doors of the throne room opened, Queen Eleanor rose from her seat. Her breath caught when she saw him, the boy she had raised, now a man stripped of pride, holding death in his arms. He stopped at the foot of the throne. "She's gone," he whispered. Eleanor stepped down, her hands trembling. "Alaric, what? She was everything you asked for." She endured hunger, cold, pain, and through it all, she never let go of my hand. His eyes lifted to hers, filled not with anger, but something worse. And now she's dead. The queen's composure shattered. "My son!" "No!" His voice rose, trembling. "You wanted to see if love could survive without wealth. It did, but it couldn't survive without mercy." He sank to his knees, cradling Clara one last time. "You taught me how to rule," he said softly, "but she taught me how to feel." The hall fell silent except for the sound of his quiet sobs. Nobles, servants, and guards looked away, ashamed. Eleanor knelt beside him, her tears falling freely. "I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" he rasped. "From the very thing that makes us human?" She had no answer. Only the sound of grief lingered between them. The queen touched Clara's forehead gently, her voice trembling. "Forgive me, child." Then she looked at her son. "We'll honor her, properly." The funeral took place at dawn. Bells tolled over Aldenbury as white petals were scattered down the river, the same river that flowed beneath the city walls. Eleanor stood beside Alaric, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. For once, there was no crown between them, only silence. When Clara's coffin was set adrift, Alaric whispered, "You once said love was weakness, but if love is weakness, then let me never be strong again." Eleanor turned away, her tears hidden behind her veil. That day, she decreed that the royal treasury would fund homes for the poor and widowed across the kingdom, built in Clara's name. For the first time, Aldenbury's people saw a queen not of cold marble,
but of flesh and compassion. But her heart was still heavy with guilt. Months passed, the kingdom thrived again, yet the palace felt emptier than ever. Alaric had withdrawn from court, spending his days in the gardens Clara once tended. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he found a small letter tucked beneath a rose bush, sealed with wax, but fragile with time. His hands shook as he opened it. "My dearest Alaric, if you are reading this, it means I could not keep my promise to grow old beside you. But please, don't let my death become your shadow. Love is not meant to end in despair, my darling. It is meant to plant something lasting, something beautiful. Find peace. Find purpose. And when you look to the stars, know I will be watching, still singing for you. From Clara." Alaric closed his eyes, tears streaking his cheeks. That night, he walked to the highest tower of the castle and whispered into the wind, "You kept your promise, Clara. You made me human." Behind him, the queen watched silently. The following morning, Eleanor summoned the royal council. Her face was drawn but resolute. "I have ruled Aldenbury for 20 years. I have led with wisdom, and yet I have been blind." The ministers exchanged wary looks. "I tested love as though it were gold to be weighed, and in doing so I lost what was priceless." Alaric entered quietly, standing beside her. For the first time, they stood not as ruler and heir, but as equals. Eleanor turned to him. "The crown is yours, my son." He shook his head. "Not yet. Not until you forgive yourself." Her eyes glistened. "Perhaps forgiveness is something we earn, not ask for." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll earn it together." She nodded, tears threatening to fall again. "Together, then." The council bowed deeply, and word of the queen's transformation spread throughout the kingdom. Aldenbury, once ruled by cold calculation, became known for its compassion, and at its heart stood a grieving mother and a son who had learned that love, even when it ends, can rebuild empires. Years later, when the queen's health began to fade, she asked for a final ride through the kingdom. The people lined the streets, throwing white petals as her carriage passed. Beside her rode Alaric, now a man of peace and vision. They stopped by the river, the same place Clara's coffin had drifted away years before. The queen leaned back, her voice frail but steady. "Do you still think of her?" he said softly. "Every day." Eleanor smiled weakly. "Then she's not truly gone." Alaric looked at her, eyes filled with quiet understanding. "And neither will you be." She reached out, her trembling hand resting on his. "Promise me something. Anything. When you rule," she whispered, "love them, even when it hurts. Lead with heart, not fear." He nodded, tears welling. "I promise." She smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen in years. "Then my crown is safe." Her eyes fluttered closed as the wind carried the scent of roses from the riverbanks. The Queen of Aldenbury, Eleanor of Windell, took her last breath beneath a golden sky. When the bells tolled again, the entire kingdom mourned. Not the ruler who had tested love, but the woman who had learned it. Alaric was crowned king, not in grandeur, but in quiet dignity. He walked barefoot to the chapel, carrying a single rose. At Clara's grave, he knelt and placed the flower gently on the stone. "Your love built a kingdom, and your name will never fade." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a fleeting moment, he could swear he heard her voice, soft, distant, singing the same melody she once sung before the court. He closed his eyes, letting the sound wrap around him like sunlight. In that moment, King Alaric knew, love, even when it ends, does not die.
it becomes the pulse of every heart it touches. He rose, turned to the people, and said with quiet conviction, "Let Aldenbury be known not for its riches, but for its mercy, for that is our true legacy." Cheers erupted, echoing through the valley. In the end, love tests us all, stripping us of pride, fear, and pretense until only truth remains. And when it does, what's left is not weakness, but strength born of the heart. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment below, and share this tale with someone who still believes in love that transcends power. Until next time, may your own story be written with grace, courage, and compassion.